So do you pay attention to bracketology? Were you looking at where you could go, and how did you feel about your final location, final seating, all that?
You know, honestly, there are years that I do and years that I don't. I certainly knew we had an ability to play up to the 4 line and probably hadn't done that. I had seen us as a 5 or a 6, but I hadn't really paid a lot of attention to where, who, you know, certainly I knew Spokane and, you know, certain places. You never quite know what the committee's going to do with strength of schedule, key losses. You know, you see like Tennessee as a 6 seed, and a lot of that was based on close losses rather than wins. And so you just never know how they're going to view each season and each team, and what do they look at? Is it last 10? Is it strength of schedule? All of that. So not disappointed. You know, I think the toughest part about our draw is honestly not knowing who our first opponent is. That unique addition of the first 4 and feeling like, okay, we were going to finally have, after a week of just working on ourselves, okay, now we have an opponent to work towards. And I think you have to kind of look at both and see commonalities and what can we spend the next 3 days really focused on in terms of being prepared, and at the same time still not knowing. And so I think that's the unique challenge, but I think going to Blacksburg is probably easier than going to Spokane. It's maybe easier than some of the locations getting to, you know, and then, you know, but you got to show up and you got to compete, and it doesn't matter what the number is in front of your name. You know, you got to show up and play.
You just touched on it, but getting that extra time to focus on yourselves now, I guess maybe a little extra time. Do you still focus all on yourself? Do you sprinkle in a little bit?
No, I think you sprinkle it in. You don't maybe start talking about, okay, this is the play call and this is what they call it. But certainly you're trying to look at, is this a team that sets a lot of flares? Are they a pin down team? You know, are they playing man? Are they playing zone? If we're seeing both, we're working on both. So maybe it's not directly, hey, this is what Columbia does, or this is what Vandy does, but certainly it's more of a, this is what we're going to have to be prepared for. This is what they do against ball screens. They ice. They, you know, what is their coverage, things like that. So we'll start to focus on being prepared for ball screen coverage, offense, defense, things like that. But we won't necessarily be like, all right, this is the play call for Columbia's high-low action, you know. I mean, I certainly am very familiar with Cambridge and Washington and the kids at Vandy. I'm familiar with Sue, who's been their best player for a couple years. I mean, I watched them make the run to the WNIT championship last year at Kansas, and was actually really, really happy for Columbia. I think it's a good thing for the Ivy League. I think Columbia probably was one of the first 4 out on a lot of bracketology type things, but certainly she pleaded really, really well to the media after their loss against Princeton yesterday. So I think we're going to face 2 teams that haven't been, either one of them hasn't been to the NCAA tournament in a while. And so because of that, you know, you're going to get 2 really, really motivated teams to be successful. It won't be old hat for them.
How important is having players like Sarah and Jenna that have been to the NCAA tournament, made some runs in a moment like this?
Yeah, I think even, you know, Bella and Bug's experience last year, I mean, we had to go come from 24 down against Alabama, and then to play UConn at UConn in front of a sellout. Certainly, you know, we'll go one game at a time, but there's no doubt with what Virginia Tech has done over the last couple of years, they're going to sell it out. So I think it's important that all of them have had a taste of that experience. You know, even Dre's played in an NCAA tournament at Kentucky. It's been a couple years. Jada played it a couple years ago. It was one and done for them, but certainly it won't be a new stage for them. And I know that Jada, it's as close to home as we'll ever get. So it'll be a really good thing for her.
Scott told us when we talked to him that the next few days are reserved for watching every game that Colgate's ever played. You know, what is that kind of what?
That's the unique challenge. I mean, I think that as much as you're looking at scouting reports, for me, it's feel. You know, it's just watching game after game, getting a feel, you know, from an offensive perspective, where are their holes? Like, where are we going to attack? You know, what are we going to have to do offensively to be good against either opponent? You know, you start to... You usually in these type of situations, you start to figure out what will they do against each other, because you watch both of them enough to kind of coach the other team against each other. And so yeah, you do, because it's the beauty of the NCAA tournament. Certainly you've seen these teams play. Love what Shea Ralph has done at Vanderbilt this year and the changes. But I think you haven't had a chance to really dive in. Everything's been like very superficial, just watching games, watching SEC tournament games, Sundays at home on days off, catching an SEC matchup. But, yeah, there'll be a lot of film, that's for sure.
Is it a big difference between, obviously you know the Big 12 teams, but you went into the Big 12 tournament not knowing who you would play. Is it a little bit like that?
It's similar. At the same time, those are teams that we had played,
Right.
scouts that we had already put in, it's funny because people, we're talking before we go to the game, and as a staff, it's like, who do you think's going to win? And I had told them I think Houston's going to win based on law of averages, but 2 out of 3, they'd beaten them twice. And then when Texas Tech beat them, afterwards I said, well, here's the reality. I've only watched Texas Tech film because I said I thought Houston would win, but ultimately in my mind I knew that Texas Tech had an edge on them. So I had watched our game. I'd watched Texas Tech's previous 3 games going into the tournament. So sometimes you kind of can predict. In this case, I can't predict because I haven't watched either team enough to think, okay, this is a team that should win. And it's not always about who's the most talented team. It's what matchup can you exploit, because that's what the NCAA tournament is about. It's not always, sometimes it's about the best team advances. Sometimes it's purely matchups.
How much do, in these multi-day tournament settings, everyone's in the same location, how much do you go off of what you watch in scouting the course of the year? Obviously they're not going to reinvent themselves, but I guess implementing that with what you're seeing with your eyes, you get to actually watch these girls in person and maybe seeing what doesn't maybe come through on the film, I guess.
Yeah, I think you get a better feel sometimes, as much as anything, for size, speed, size, physicality. Those are things you see up close in person that you guess at on film. And then you're like, oh, she's not as big as I thought she was. It's a little 5'2" guard, but plays much bigger. So I think you see that. But when it comes to game planning, it's very much determined by volume. It's information. It's analytics. It's, just because you see them play one game and they're hot from 3 doesn't mean that you change your game plan just because they made shots that game. I think you have to go based off, and I feel that way about players. Like, people may choose to look at Sarah's last 17 games and say, she's shooting 25%. I think people still guard her because it's the body of work. Over her career, she's been almost a 40% three-point shooter, so you don't want to roll the dice on that. So I think you play law of averages as much as you play just like, okay, what do I see with my eyes when I'm here? I've seen Virginia Tech play a lot, but I think everyone's asking the question, is Kitley going to play? I don't think it matters until we get past that first round. So I really am not going to be too worried about whether she plays or whether she doesn't until, we can put a first round W on the board, which is the most important thing.
Well, one thing that kind of sticks out with Virginia Tech, we've talked about, is they've sold out so many of their games, and their atmosphere is incredible. What do you kind of expect from that? And it could be kind of similar to how Storrs was last year, so that kind of be an advantage for y'all going into that.
Yeah, I think it's I've said it before. I feel like it's not a moment in women's basketball. I think it's a movement, and I think people are understanding how fun the games are, how high quality they are. And I think when you look at, it's not like Kenny turned it around in 2 years. It's not that Dawn built her fan base in South Carolina in 2 or 3 years. Like it takes time. And I think what they've done is had this slow and steady build, and then all of a sudden you put together a team with the 3-time ACC Player of the Year in Kitley, and they've had a lot of other good players. But I know that people don't talk about Georgia Amore the same way they do Caitlin Clark, but when you talk about price of admission and watching someone who's super creative with the ball in her hands and can make shots and make them from all over the place, like when you miss the opportunity to watch players like that, it's almost like shame on the fans because they are so good, and it was fun to see the Virginia Tech game sell out. Like, it's been some lean years in Charlottesville. So to see, both fans or, teams be represented so well in that last game of the year was really, really exciting. I just think in the women's basketball world.
Have you seen a type of recommitment and focus that you wanted after the Iowa State game?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen the ball go through the basket. You know, when push comes to shove, a big part of our success is going to be making shots. You know, when you look at what we did against Alabama last year and competing with UConn for 2.5 quarters, we put the ball in the basket. And I think, you know, when you look at the analytics from our success early in the season, you know, maybe our numbers were a little inflated. Maybe we were a little crazy in terms of how well we were shooting the basketball. But there's got to be a happy medium, you know, because the basement, you know, we went from like kind of the penthouse to the basement in terms of our ability to put the ball in the basket and make threes, you know. And, you know, I think when Sarah Andrews, when Bella Fauntleroy, when those guys aren't shooting 25 and 30% from three and are shooting 35 to 45%, all of a sudden, you know, we're probably a 4 seed because we make a couple shots in the fourth quarter against Iowa State, and that game's totally different, you know. And so I think you certainly have to battle regardless of if you make shots. And, you know, I think you can look at our men and you see their success when they make threes versus when they don't. You don't live and die by it, you know. But at the same time, like, to be balanced, to have opportunity to succeed sometimes against bigger teams and teams that play zone, you know, you've got to make shots. So I think that's been the best thing, is them getting in the gym, being really committed to getting shots up and see the ball go through the basket.
How good was it? You've obviously been through it before, but how good was it just to see the name pop up? You know you're going to be in the tournament, but kind of seeing your name and then figuring out where you're going to.
Relieving. Obviously, like you said, I knew we were going to be in the tournament, but just seeing our name, it kind of just lifted a little weight off of us. It's just always nervous, just, you know, waiting and sitting there and waiting for your name to be shown on the screen. But when it did, you know, we were all happy, we were excited. So.
What goes through your mind when you see kind of like the potential, I guess, places y'all could go as they reveal kind of your other matchups? What kind of goes through your mind? Oh, we could go somewhere.
Just you are a little nervous, not like scared, but that you're just nervous because like the possibilities are like I don't know where I could end up, but I could end up here. I could be playing this person, these people, but it's a little nerve-wracking a little bit. But after you find out where you're gonna be and who you're playing, it's real fun, exciting. So.
I guess for you, your second time around now, does it take you back to, you know, the nervousness maybe, or just the feelings, emotions you had with your first time, and what memories you kind of have from, you know, your first tournament and carried over into this year?
It definitely brings back memories from freshman year. I remember how I felt when all this was going on the first time, and just doing it again was even more exciting. But I think that kind of sitting there, my mindset was like, okay, I've been here before, so I kind of know what to expect, but also a little bit more excited because I have a lot more under my belt this year. I have a lot more experience, even from that first year, so I could bring it this year.
What else did you kind of learn from the tournament last year, especially being in stores? What did you learn that you're carrying with you specifically?
I got to bring my A game. I got to be intense from the beginning. That's my main thing. Like I said, I just know for me, starts with defense for me. So I just think that being more intense on the defensive end will help me flourish on the offensive end. But just intensity and knowing that everybody's hard. It's March Madness. Everybody's good, but just being intentional, but also being confident. I think I wasn't scared last year, but it being my first time, I didn't know what to expect, and essentially it was all the feels for me because at least being in high school and then coming to be a freshman in college, you always see it on TV, but actually being there, reality kind of hit, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm here. But it's still exciting to me. I'm always going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm here again. But I just think that just really being confident, at least for me, because I can do it. I have the skills to do it, and just, yeah.
Have you seen a recommitment, a refocus after kind of the way the Big 12 tournament ended?
Definitely. But I would just say, like I always say, focus on us. We just have to really work on some little details now. I feel like from here on out, there's more little details. There's all the talent in the tournament, but those little details and execution is what will secure your spot.
You did it last year, now coming in this year, are the expectations rising now that this team's going again?
A little bit, but I mean, we just have to stay true to us. That's always been our big thing, and we're going to stand on it. When we focus on us, everything else comes. And yes, you have your opponent, you got to focus on what they do. But if we make up in our mind that we want to do something, we can do it.
Jen, obviously you knew you were getting in, but now you know where you're going, what you're seated. How did that feel, just seeing your name pop up?
It always feels good. It's a really great accomplishment to be in the tournament, and I know we're all really excited.
What do you think about that matchup? I mean, not knowing who for sure you're going to play, but where you're going, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's nice to know where you're going, and it's nice to know like who we might play, even though we don't know the specific team, but we'll be prepared. So.
What's kind of the feeling when you guys hear your name called? Obviously, you know, you go from the Big 12 tournament to this.
Mm-hmm.
Now a lot of players playing possibly in their final games.
Yeah.
The Bears.
It's exciting to see our name up there, and it's also like win or go home, and you know you play for the people who might not be able to come back, or if it's their last game. It's just exciting.
What have y'all tried to use this time off after the conference tournament, and especially knowing going into the tournament, I know you're going to be looking at both teams maybe a little bit, but maybe a little extra time to just focus on yourselves?
Yeah, it's been nice the past few days. We've been working really hard, but not as long as we usually do, and we're just getting back to who we are, after that loss, and building our confidence.
Jen, you've talked about it in terms of how conference tournament play and then the big dance is win or go home. What kind of added pressure maybe does that serve, but you guys kind of feed off of it a little bit?
Yeah, I think our team does well under pressure, and it's more exciting than anything else, and so it's going to be fun.
I know it's been a minute, but any takeaways from that loss to Iowa State in the Big 12 tournament in terms of, what y'all can take from that and maybe get better at, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we just needed to get in the gym and get up shots and see the ball go through the basket.
You heard that a lot, didn't you?
Yes.
How's the team kind of just come together since that loss and a couple days y'all been back? I mean, what's kind of the mood, moving forward into the tournament with everyone in the locker room?
Yeah, our mood is great. That loss definitely brought us closer. It didn't tear us apart or anything like that. And it's just another lesson, so it helps us prepare.
I know there's some kind of like funny reactions when some of the teams are called, maybe expected to play a team like, LSU, or even I think Notre Dame was a lot of, what's kind of your take on were there surprises for you in the tournament, and or is there any surprise that, number 5 in the Virginia Tech bracket at all for you?
No surprises for me.
You get a little extra time, with the downtime, and it's, it is sort of the next thing. I know during the season, y'all are always trying to focus on the game, trying not to get caught up in the bracketology of the matchups, but do y'all allow yourself to have a little fun in your downtime of looking at some of those potential things, I guess, leading up to this day?
Looking up to potential matchups? Of course. Yeah, we love watching every team play and, all the big games that are exciting, and just imagining, how we would match up with them, how we would play them. Yeah, we do that for sure.
Do you and some of the older vets kind of shoulder that veteran responsibility going into postseason play for maybe some of the younger girls?
Yeah, I think people who have been in the tournament before kind of know what it takes and can help support and push the other teammates, which is nice, and we have a lot of experience on this team, so yeah.